Good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. I watched yesterday's video back while I was cooking dinner last night, and it's incredible how many times I go, and make lots of other noises while I'm thinking. It's so interesting watching yourself back. I wonder if I'm like that when I'm in meetings. Maybe we should record all meetings going forward. Oh dear. Okay. Let's get my head into gear. What we're going to be talking about today. So, okay, let's recap on where we got to yesterday, actually, in the last video. So in episode 3, that was it. So we were putting together the structure for the pack that had that was basically outlining how to run a portfolio. Oh, in fact, let's get the little screen open. So we got, that was it. I was talking through kind of the different areas that we'd be touching on. And one thing that's really kind of jumping out at me at the moment is the intake process. God, it touches on all. It's the intake process. It's the how we're prioritizing and how we're managing risk. Now, these items here, like across 3 different areas. So we're defining the portfolio, we're optimizing the portfolio, we're protecting the portfolio. So these cover 3 different areas. But when we're intaking work, when we're bringing work into the portfolio, we really need to be understanding what's the risk that we're carrying with each of these items, and what's the urgency as well. What's the business urgency for something like this, that whatever the business is asked for. There we go. I'm going to really be conscious in this video of saying and and filling time. Big learning lesson for me, so bear with me. Okay. So let's focus on the intake process. So, okay, let's just let's make some notes. Let's make some notes on what we mean by the intake process. So someone from the business has got an idea, or they might have a series of ideas. And I say someone, it might be a group, lots of different people. They've got lots of different ideas. So let's just start putting something down. So these are our idea balls. I suppose that I did have a slide earlier called concepts. Okay then, so we've got our idea balls. Let's let's call them concept balls. So a group of people have come up with these different items, and we've got a fixed amount of resource that we can utilize at any one time to deliver against these. So let's say that our resource is is 100, whatever 100 means. And oh yeah, okay, right. So and these are blocks of time. Let's do this as a percentage. Right, okay then. So we've got lots of concepts, and this is our ability to deliver. Now, we've got a threshold that we can't go beyond. And let's make this a red line, because red is the danger line. And let's just call this time and effort. So this is what our current portfolio looks like. In the next period of time, we are fully allocated. So we've got no capacity to deliver anything other than what we've currently got in the portfolio. In the next chunk of time, we do have capacity. Ooh, my scale's all off here. We do have some capacity. We have 10 capacity free, yeah, whatever 10 means. But then in the next chunk of time, we're over allocated. And then beyond that, we've got capacity to do something else. So there's two different things going on here. One thing that we would look to address straight away is the fact that here, let's make this red. So we're over allocated there. So I'm not going to get too much into that right now. This is a bit of a separate subject, but the fact that we're over allocated there, we could address that with two different things. So is there a fixed date, like on when these things have to be done? So do we need to pull in more resources, whether those are permanent staff or we need to outsource? We need to outsource to whoever we need to outsource to deliver on these projects or these products, whatever they might be in this section, or we could move that along and then reduce the effort in here and push this down here if they're not time critical. But let's just leave that as it is for the moment. And then coming back to our new concept, so our intake, we know that this is what the portfolio looks like at the moment. And we've got a funnel of work here. And I wonder if we've got a funnel. Oh my lord, look at that. Oh, I'm not sure if it's going to do what I want it to do. I could probably just draw a better one. Maybe not a better one, but one that's a bit more suited to what we need. So let's just flip this thing around. Where's the flippy thing on this? Size and position. Shape format. Right, so let's put it there. And Okay. Right. So let's make that a little bigger. So here we've got our intake, our concept funnel. Concept funnel. So these are all the great ideas for things that we can bring into the portfolio. And they go down. And they get discussed at, there'll be some kind of forum where these items are discussed, and we'll be doing assessments and asking certain questions of each of these. So and this all comes down to how strict do you want your intake process to be. So I would say that this is the more governance heavy side of it, because once something's in the portfolio, you'll be delivering against it. Like the objective is to see it through to the end, or the objective of the portfolio manager and everyone in each of the teams will be to fulfill on the ask. So we want to make sure that whatever we're bringing in, once it's in the process, we'll deliver against it. But if it's not adding the value that perhaps another item could deliver, have we misallocated resources? Have we allocated resources to the wrong thing? Did we miss something? Did we miss something where we wanted to paint the bridge blue because that's the because that's the color that we like, but actually the foundations are falling to pieces. So perhaps we should have initiated a project to fix the foundations instead of painting it, because the bridge is going to fall over. So it's these types of questions that we should be asking at this stage of the intake of work into the portfolio. So I guess the questions that we would be asking might differ from company to company, but there should be some generic things that we should be asking at this stage. And let's make a little list of things that we could be asking. So this is going to look a bit messy, but let's make the fonts a bit bigger. Maybe not that big. Text. Right then, what are some of the questions that we... okay then, so we're a data and analytics function. So some of the questions that we can be asking are around, well, let's break this up into different sections. So the first section would be around business strategy. I want to make this a little smaller. I will zoom in a bit. Business strategy. So what's one question that we could ask? So is the concept aligned to the strategic objectives of the department / or organization? Really big question. So, and a really fundamental one, I would say. It's very easy especially in the data and analytics world, to have a great idea for, oh, if we had this report that did this one thing, then we would be able to, that it would just be so cool, you know. It would be so cool to have this chart or this bit of analysis. I don't know what's a good bit of analysis. Like, I don't know. We want to look at the standard deviation across standard deviation of God knows of items that get of bananas that get thrown away or something like that across stores, and we want to look for the outliers, like which stores are outstanding for throwing away bananas. So it's a really interesting idea to look at that, you know, that piece of analysis. But is it the strategically, is that where we should be focusing our efforts at the moment? Like just on bananas? You know, fruit might not be I'm you know, diving into retail now, but fruit might not be the problem area that that the business wants to focus on. It might be beans. and if the company has agreed strategically that we focus on beans, and we're happy with bananas, like regardless of how many get thrown away, then why would we initiate a project that would create or maybe not a project, why would we commission the build of a report under the product management kind of banner that would focus on that type of analysis when there is no strategic kind of alignment to any of the objectives of the department or even the organization as a whole? So it's a very interesting question to ask at this point, because someone could get really, really excited about the fact that we're going to do this analysis over bananas. You know, it could be their dream that they've had all their life to do this level of analysis, because they're very sure that the analysis will show that store X is throwing away too many bananas. But actually, it's whilst it's really cool and you know, it's something that we could all get behind, there are better things. Better's a difficult word, probably the wrong word. There are other things in the concept funnel that should be taking our attention, that are aligned to the objectives of the business. So it's a very, very simple question, very black and white. Is the concept aligned to the strategic objectives of the department or the organisation? Yes or no? And there may be some grey in there. I suppose I was going to talk about key performance indicators then, actually. And maybe actually let's just explore key performance indicators for a second, especially if we're a data and analytics company department that's managing, and our portfolio is all data and analytics related work. So does this concept make does this concept use does this concept use or contribute or affect a department's or a department's or organization's key performance indicators. Let's see if that sentence makes sense. Does this concept use or affect? Sign into Grammarly. Yeah, let's sign into Grammarly because I definitely need to make use of Grammarly. Affect. Yeah. Well, Grammarly is definitely coming to the rescue here. Love it. Right then. Does this concept use or affect a department slash does this concept use or affect a department slash organization's key performance indicators? Does it make use of a key performance indicator? Or does it affect a key performance indicator? Are they two different things? Does it use one? Or does it affect one? That's an interesting one. So let's just explore that for a second. So it could use. Okay, so to go back to the previous example, a key performance indicator that's used by the business might be how many items have we thrown away? Have we had to throw away? So I guess in this circumstance, we would use a key performance indicator, which would be something you've lost or something like a waste percentage, say. Let's call it wasted. So the wasted or waste key performance indicator is used, and the concept itself, well, let's go with the banana example. So the concept itself would affect it as well. So it makes use of it, and makes use of it. And if we built the report, it would look to improve that key performance indicator. Yeah. Okay then. So I guess actually, they're probably one in the same in most circumstances. There might be a circumstance where you're using a key performance indicator to do something, but the effect that the product will have is on a different performance indicator. So maybe this is going to be a bit confusing to say make use of or affect. So does a concept use, or I want to say affect. Does a concept affect a department / organization's key performance? Does this concept affect a department / organization's key performance indicator? If the answer is yes, so what's the value of this question? If it's strategically aligned, it should have a measure against it. So there should be a key performance indicator. So I do think this question adds value, because if someone's saying that it's strategically aligned to their objectives, but there is no key performance indicator, then actually maybe then that forms that is a valid outcome, because maybe it's a new performance measure that needs to be implemented, and then that's a whole thing in itself as part of the project or the deployment of the product, depending on how you'd want to deploy it, to introduce a new performance indicator. So yeah, I think that's a very relevant question. And the reason why I'm kind of deliberating over this so much in my head is, like, I was trying to get to the crux of, is this question like a subcomponent of the strategic objective question? But I think it stands on its own, because you could also have something affect a key performance indicator, so something that the organization takes seriously, but that is not strategically aligned. And maybe you could challenge the business on why it's a key performance indicator then. I mean, like, it might be a performance indicator, it might just kind of like sit there in the background as something that people are interested in, but does it affect the strategic objectives? No. I'm going to think of an example of something like that off the top of my head. What's the cumulative miles of people traveling to work? It's like, it's interesting, but does anyone care? Maybe. I suppose if we had a strategic objective that was looking at sustainability or reducing our carbon footprint, then we could look at our cumulative miles traveled to work, and we could say, right, over the next 5 years we want to reduce that number by X percentage, and we will do that by only employing people within a certain radius, or promote people riding to work, or whatever it might be. So, okay then. So, well, let's just leave those ones there. So we've got business strategy. So for a data and analytics team, we're very interested in data availability. Well, let's just call it data. Okay. So what's the question here? Simple question. Is the data currently available via our, let's just say, via our data warehouse? Is the data currently available? Be right back. Hello there. Sorry, I had to go. I don't know why I'm apologising. It's really early in the morning here, and I needed a cup of tea. So, cheers. Oh, so good. So good. Just gone 6:30 in the morning. So I've got an hour and a half before I need to start work. So let's plow on. Where did we get to? Data. Is the data currently available in that data warehouse? One interesting question. Because in terms of our ability to deliver, I'm just going to move this to our capability to deliver value. So let's go back in here. Is the data currently available in our data warehouse? Yeah. So if it's not, then then we need to be asking ourselves, okay, we're going to be ingesting a new we're going to be ingesting data from somewhere new. So there's a lot of processes that we're going to need to, a lot of different processes that we're going to need to follow in order to make this thing a reality. So if we're already ingesting data into the data warehouse, let's take our medallion standard. So if we've got our kind of our bronze and our silver layers already established, so there might not be a consumption layer or a gold layer there that we can draw on. But let's say back to the example we were talking about earlier of things getting lost, or sorry, things getting wasted. If we've got wastage data sitting in our silver layer, so it's been cleaned, it's been tight, it's been organized, the tables are there waiting to be where we can draw down on information. The speed in which we can develop this item is dramatically reduced, and we would be looking to create a consumption layer that focuses on, well, the banana example didn't make it through the strategic objective question, but the beans, but then the person came back and said, I wasn't thinking straight. I wasn't thinking about bananas. I was thinking about beans, and beans are strategically aligned. So we want to look at how many beans we're wasting every day. So yeah, if we've got wastage data in our silver layer in our data warehouse, then we can create a consumption layer that just focuses on beans, and then slap a front end on it and allow people to consume that data. So the speed that we can move this from concept through to like a working product in production is dramatically reduced. So it's a really valid question in terms of resources, risk, lots of different questions are resolved, I think, or a lot of different risk is reduced by having something in the data warehouse. If something's not in the data warehouse, then what does that mean? Well, it's like, if something's not there, does it just automatically kind of get a red flag? Well, I suppose in one sense, yes, it's far more difficult for us to deliver against, but this comes back to the question of strategic alignment and what's the long-term vision for this data. Okay, so we don't have any wastage data in our data warehouse, but our strategic objectives are that we'll be monitoring waste, not just in the next quarter, but over the next, for the foreseeable future. This is something that the business is taking seriously for at least the next year, so and beyond. So it's going to form a fundamental pillar of the organisation to monitor wastage. So all of a sudden, the fact it's not in the data warehouse, that's fine, because we want to bring in the capability to be able to report on this. So we want to pull the data in from the source systems. We want to create our bronze layers in our data warehouse. We want to create our silver layers and ultimately our consumption layers in the warehouse. So yeah, a bigger project perhaps, but where does it add value? Well, yes, absolutely. It adds tremendous value that we can foresee. Um, so, so yeah, we could have that question in there. So, is it in the data warehouse? But then, actually, there's a follow-on question to that. To ask. How do we have data quality concerns? So, yeah, a follow-on question: do we have data quality concerns from the source system? This is where we're really starting to understand risk now. It's one thing bringing in some data, but if we can't trust the data, then where's the value, I suppose? So, but that's not to say we still shouldn't bring it in, because the data quality concerns might be something that can be fixed. Like the integrity of the data might be sound. It's just really messy. The way that the data is organized is incredibly hard to interpret. So there's risk there with extra effort as we're pulling in the data into that bronze layer. I pull it in its raw form, but then when we convert it into the silver layer in the data warehouse, there's a lot of overhead required, server time required, compute time required to process all of this information. So a really interesting question again, to not just understand the complexity around the delivery of the product, but the ongoing maintenance of the product as well. So, is there an ongoing cost to this? So we'll incur a cost to deliver against it, but then we're also taking on or increasing our technical debt in order to keep this product alive, basically. Do we have data quality concerns? Here's a good question. Does PPI, what does PPI stand for? Data protection. What does PPI stand for? Payment protection insurance. Oh, that's not what I'm asking for. What does PPI stand for? So this is GDPR. What does PPI stand for in the context of GDPR? Oh, PII. Thank you, Google, for telling. It was so polite. It just said it's often an incorrectly used acronym when it should be PII. Personally identifiable information. Do we have any PII concerns? No, not concerns. Should Should PII be considered? Yep, big one. Completely changes how we will be storing data, surfacing data, who gets to see it, all these different types of things. This can be maybe 3 different levels on PII. There's no consideration. There might be some PII that's less sensitive. I'm not familiar with GDPR law in detail, but I imagine that there's some information that's more sensitive than others, other pieces of information. So, someone's name and telephone number and address might be a bit more sensitive than if they're left-handed or right-handed. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't read the law on it, so I can't comment. But it's definitely a question that we should be asking at this stage, because again, it layers on those. It layers on how much risk are we carrying. So how much risk are we taking on into the business for? Like, if someone wanted to have a report that everyone wants to see, but it's got PII considerations, there needs to be such strict governance around like who gets to see, who gets access to this, and what's the ongoing maintenance of who gets access, and lots of different questions to be asked there. So okay, we'll leave it at that one for the moment. So we've got business strategy questions, we've got data related questions. Is there any more data related questions? I suppose there might be a question around the source systems, or how many sources of information are we pulling from? Okay, so is that a relevant question? How many sources of information are we drawing down, are we pulling from? I think it is relevant. And the reason why I'm hesitating on this one is, well, there could be 10 different sources of, let's just say 10 different databases, but there might be a really small amount of data from each database. So yes, we've got to establish connections to 10 different databases, but if it's just one table and one column from each of those databases, then actually, once we've dealt with the setting up all of the connections, the actual size of the data is small. But then on the flip side of it, you could have one source, one database that's got 100 tables in it, and there is gigabytes of data in each of those tables. So volume of systems doesn't feel like as relevant a question as trying to assess at this stage the volume of information. So I'm going to put a question. I'm going to put a question of, what is the volume of information required to maintain the ask? Actually, yeah, we probably need to follow up each of these with an answer. In fact, we definitely need to follow up with an answer. And what we want to do is we want to have an answer that it's not uniform for each of the questions that we're asking, in that it's either a yes, maybe, or no. We could perhaps have 3 different answers for each of these, but yeah, we could have 3 different answers for each of these, but they could be worded very differently. But what they do is they allow us to kind of categorize on whether this is a low risk response to the question or a higher risk response to the question. So actually the PPI one, so a lower risk response would be that there are no PII considerations. A higher risk response is that there are PII considerations. And then a medium one might be that there is personal information but not considered sensitive, something like that. Yeah. So actually, let's continue with the questions, and then we'll get into how we're answering each of these. Okay. I think we've got enough data questions now. Now, I don't want to ask too many questions at this point in time. It's just around getting this initial snapshot. My cat's just come back in. He's going to be meowing now. Pussycat. Nah, no meows. He's obviously happy. I think it's probably getting a bit cold outside, so he's come back in. Business. Right. So we talked about strategy. Let's talk about operations. So how does this affect the day-to-day? I guess a question here would be around, we're talking about data and analytics, so who's the end audience? Who are the consumers of data? Who are the consumers of is that the right question to be asking? Who are the consumers of the information? I guess what we want to determine is how many people are going to see. Hello? Is a pussycat. Oh, you are cold. You are cold. I've got a little bed for him in front of me, so you can go to sleep in front of the computer, which is what he likes to do. So, who are the consumers of information? I'm not sure if that's the right question to be asking. I'm going to move our little concept funnel diagram onto there. Make that a bit bigger. Who are the consumers of information? Okay. We want to understand. I think there's two questions in that question I've got there. Who's the audience and the volume? Okay, then let's just put all these down. Who are the consumers of the information? The audience. What is the volume? Of these are very data reporty type questions now. We're definitely not building bridges here. We are building data related products that will be consumed by people in the business. What is the volume of consumers? And I suppose a third question, actually, to put a third dimension on this. What frequency? What frequency will consumers require this information? So what's the relevance of these questions? Well, the consumers of the information. So this could be, is this report going to the CEO, the senior leadership team, managers, or operators? Oh, good God. The cat's sitting on my mouse. Why don't you sit on here where it's comfortable? Come on. Oh my Lord. Causing all sorts of a kerfuffle. I know. Okay. Let's get myself back organised. There we go. Okay. Does it change? Here's the question. Does it change whether we would do something if it's seen by the CEO or if it's seen by an end user, like an operator? Does that change the importance of it? Well, it's a consideration, because if the CEO is going to see the report, then it adds a certain gravity to it, and you would want it to be done on time, for obvious reasons. You don't want to look bad in front of the CEO for delivering something late, but then again, you can apply that to anything. So if we're doing something for the end users, does that mean it's okay to be late? No. And actually, the purpose of the report for the end users or the operators, if it's strategically aligned and it helps improve a performance indicator that's in the spotlight of the CEO, then then it's having it's got the same gravity. It's having the same. It's ending up on the in the visibility of the senior leadership team. So, is it a valid question at this point about the audience? I guess it's kind of valid, in that I think it's interesting, and it's good to know from a security point of view for setting up permissions and Active Directory groups and those types of things. Does it affect whether we would want to do something or not? I guess it adds a little bit of complexity if there are multiple audiences. And actually, it definitely affects what the product looks like and feels like, the end product. Because if you're producing something for an operator, it's most likely going to be a very focused product with a very specific function. Whereas something for the senior leadership team will have a very different look and feel, perhaps more broad, definitely more to the point, quick to read, be it a report or something of that nature. So I think it is probably a design question. I don't think it's a bad thing to be asking it at this point in time, but does it really weigh against whether we would do something or not? I don't think it does. It just adds perhaps a little bit of complexity depending on the answers. That said, if you've got audiences outside of your company or even the public, then it does add a lot of complexity. So on that circumstance, I think it is a very relevant question. But in order to assess the risk, we need to, it's all around the answers for that one. Excuse me while I have a sip from my tea. So yeah, we'll come back to that one. That's quite an interesting question, actually. I didn't think about I was thinking of it purely internally to the company, but if it's going to external, you might have different, it might be a report that reports on the performance of contractors, and you only want certain contractors to see their information. So actually, in terms of security concerns, it's quite a big one. So yeah, audience is quite a big question, actually. So the volume of consumers. Okay. Is that of concern, whether it's one or a... Yes, it is. I suppose you'll have certain considerations to do with the volume of consumers. If there was 10, if it was just for the CEO, if it was just for the CEO, then you've got one person looking at it, say, once a month. It's very important that it's accurate and it's ready on time. But in terms of load on the server, it's virtually non-existent. And on the flip side of that, if it's being digested by the public, and there's potentially, well, hundreds of thousands of clicks per month, or even, maybe in the millions, latency becomes a quite a relevant question there. And yeah, I think that's it. If we've got quality expectations, like the end users need to have their results within a second of pressing the button. If you've got 1 million people doing that every hour, what's the likelihood that we're going to be able to meet that quality criteria? And if the answer is, well, you can meet it, but the overhead required, the server compute that we have to throw at that in order to meet those quality expectations is going to cost, X amount every month, then it puts into question, then it might put into question the value of the concept. Okay, so that's a relevant one. How frequently do consumers require the information? I guess that's interesting from a design point of view. It comes back to maybe the who's looking at it, how many people are looking at it, and when are they looking at it? Daily, monthly, weekly, yearly? Is it a relevant question at this point in time? Let's leave it in there. I've thought of another one for this kind of business strategy. Does the concept generate revenue? Or avoid spending? So basically, is there a financial benefit to doing this? Does it generate any revenue, or are we avoiding a cost by doing this? Are we reducing our spend somewhere by implementing this? And I was thinking, is there something around is this concept attached to legal? Is this concept is this concept bound to a legal or regulatory change? Is this concept attached to illegal or regulatory change? Maybe change is the wrong word, but we'll leave that for the moment, just because I need to wrap this up in a sec, because I'm going to start my normal work. Okay, so we've got a series of questions there, haven't we? That we're asking prior to taking on a piece of work. I think there's going to be more. What's missing from there? So we've got some strategy questions. We're a data and analytics team, so we've got data questions. We're asking questions of the operation. So, who's going to be actually using the products that we produce? So is there a fourth area that we need to consider? I'm not sure at this point, but we can always come back. I think in the next video we'll start to put together some answers to these questions, and we'll do what I mentioned earlier, which is to have the answers structured in a way where you will get this high, medium and low risk rating, if risk is the right word for this. But yeah, and then yeah, if we have this high, medium and low, depending on what the answers might be, if we've got lows all the way down, like this is low risk, low risk, okay, we need to be thinking about this in two different ways. There's the value and there's the risk of doing it. So actually, are there two different questions we're asking here of these things? What's the risk and what's the value? Then what's the risk, what's the value? Then we have our prioritization matrix, which is where we want to get to with this. Okay. Now I think some of these questions are value related and some of them are risk related. So maybe we will end up kind of grouping the questions together in that way. Which ones are scoring it favorably? Okay then, so let's just very quickly. So we've got what we want at the end of this is going to be let's just take that's still what's the risk of doing something? And what's the value? And simply put, this is where we want to get to. So if we've got low, whoopsie doodles. Actually, we could have low, medium, high. Low, medium, high. So what I'm doing is just putting together a rough template for prioritization matrix. has it all gone wrong? Hang on. Trust me. This will help me when we come back to this next time. Oh, jeez. Right, so we've got this high. Hopefully you can see where we're going here. Okay then, so we've got our risk, our prioritization matrix. We've got our highs up here and our high risk in this column, high value in this row. By the end of this, what we would want to have is like all of our concepts kind of laid out like this. And then we would look at that and go, okay then, looking at our intake process, which items do we want to bring in to the portfolio? And when we look at something like this one here, the value of doing this is very high and the risk of doing it is very low. Well, not very. The value is high, but the risk is low. So this is something that we would want to bring into the portfolio. But this one here, it's high risk and high value. So I guess the question is around, like, would we want to bring this into the portfolio? Now it might be high risk because of the audience and the fact that it's a legal or regulatory change, like it has to happen. So we have to bring this into the portfolio. Like it's non-negotiable that this is something that the business needs to adopt. But understanding that it's a high risk endeavor right at the start allows us to manage that risk far more. We can plan for that risk. We can plan for it far sooner than it just kind of sitting in the pot and while we're kind of figuring out what to do with it. If we understand at this initial concept stage what needs to be done, then we can start to make allowances for that, especially when we come down to this section down here. So there may be capacity here, but actually it needs to be delivered in this block of time here. So we might have to move stuff out of that and move it into the next block of time so we can make way for this item here. Yeah. Okay then, so that's where we want to get to. We want to get to this prioritization matrix here, but we're still some ways off. We need to flesh out these questions a little bit more. We need to generate answers to the questions. We need to determine which questions we need to assign which questions are determining value and which questions are determining risk. So actually let's put that down here. Which questions are determining value and which are risk related, and then that'll allow us to do the scoring more effectively. That'll allow us to do the scoring, not more effectively, that's what I was going to say. That'll allow us to do the scoring in their prioritization. So going back to our concept, we have all of these balls, unorganized, and we want to get them. Oh my lord. Bear with me. What has happened here? Has that got everything? So we want to turn that concept funnel. Sorry. So we want to turn this concept funnel from these unorganized balls into something that's more structured and allows us to make a more informed decision about what we're intaking into the portfolio. So that's the end game here with this intake process. Taking on work, the right work that adds the right amount of value. And then we can get onto resource planning. Once we know what work's coming in, we can understand like how capable are we to actually deliver against that work. So yeah, let's leave it there. That was a bit of fun for the morning. Oh, and the sun's just starting to come up as well, so I'm going to put my big coat on and go for a nice morning walk to clear my head from this phase of my morning and get into normal work. So have a great day. I'll speak to you soon. Bye bye.